My name is Aisha, and for years I believed I had built the perfect life. A loving husband, a family that looked complete from the outside, and a future I thought was mine to protect. But what people saw was only the mask. Behind closed doors, I was living with the kind of betrayal no woman should ever have to face. It wasn't just my husband who broke me. It was my own sister, the one I grew up with, the one I shared secrets with, the one I trusted more than anyone else in this world. And when I discovered the truth, it wasn't just the affair that destroyed me, it was realizing that my mother-in-law had known about it all along and had been helping them hide it from me. That day, something inside me shattered. But when a woman's heart breaks, it doesn't stay broken forever. It hardens, it sharpens, and soon it begins to seek revenge. This is my story of betrayal, of silence, and of the day I finally decided enough was enough. My name is Aisha. And for a long time, I thought I had everything a woman could ask for. A husband who smiled at me in front of the world. A family that seemed whole. A mother-in-law who told everyone she had accepted me like a daughter. And my sister, my blood, the one person I thought would always stand beside me. But what people saw on the outside was just a beautiful lie. I remember waking up every morning to the smell of tea my mother-in-law insisted on making for my husband, even though I was right there, willing to do it. She would smile at me, too sweet, too polished. "Don't worry, Aisha, you rest. I know what he likes better." Those words never felt like kindness. They felt like a warning, but I ignored it. My sister would visit often, too often. She laughed a little too much at his jokes, her hand brushing his arm casually in front of me, as though she belonged in my home more than I did. My mother-in-law encouraged it, saying things like, "Family should stay close. Isn't it nice your sister loves visiting us?" I wanted to believe it. I forced myself to smile because who questions their own sister's intentions? But there were moments that haunted me. Late at night, I would hear hushed voices downstairs. At first, I thought it was my husband on the phone for work. But once, when I walked down the steps quietly, I heard my sister's laugh, not the sisterly laugh I knew. This one was softer, secretive, intimate. The living room lamp was off, but I could see the shadow of my husband leaning in, whispering. My heart began pounding so loud, I thought it would give me away. I froze halfway down the stairs, afraid to see what my mind already knew. Afraid to turn the suspicion into truth, I ran back upstairs, trembling, my hands over my mouth so no sound would escape. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was tired, that I was paranoid, because the alternative, that my husband and my own sister were sharing a secret, was too unbearable to believe. But the signs grew louder, my husband's sudden late night work meetings, my sister's messages, "Don't tell anyone, I'll be late," my mother-in-law's strange smiles whenever they were in the same room. One evening we had a family dinner. I sat at the table, serving rice, while my mother-in-law showered my sister with praise. "You're so beautiful, Beta. Any man would be lucky to have you." She looked at my husband as she said it, and I swear I saw something in his eyes. A flicker of guilt, or maybe desire, that made my stomach twist. I excused myself, walked to the kitchen, and stood there gripping the counter so hard my knuckles turned white. My chest felt heavy, like the walls were caving in. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but I stayed silent. Because what if I was wrong? What if it was all in my head? That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my husband's back turned to me. My sister's perfume still lingered in the hallway. My mother-in-law's words echoed in my mind, and that's when it hit me. This wasn't just my imagination. There was something happening in my home, something dark, something poisonous, and I was the only one who didn't know the full truth. I closed my eyes, tears burning my cheeks, and whispered to myself, "Whatever this is, I will find out." Because deep down I knew I had just stepped into the beginning of a nightmare. And soon I would see something I was never supposed to see. They say the truth has a way of showing itself when you least expect it. For me it came on an ordinary evening, one I thought would pass like any other. But it didn't. That night left a scar so deep, I can still feel it burning. My husband had told me he would be late at work. My mother-in-law smiled when I mentioned it, her lips curling like she knew something I didn't. "Don't wait for him, Beta. He's working hard for this family. Go rest." Her voice was sweet, but her eyes, they were sharp, like she was watching my every reaction. I tried to distract myself, reading a book in the living room. Hours passed. The house grew quiet. My sister hadn't been by that day, and for some reason that thought gave me relief. But just as I was preparing to go to bed, I heard it, the faint creak of the front door. I peeked through the half-open curtains. My husband was there, except he wasn't alone. My sister stepped in first, her laugh soft but unmistakable. His hand brushed her lower back as he closed the door behind them. My stomach twisted, the world blurred. My hands went cold. For a moment I forgot how to breathe. I hid in the shadows of the hallway, pressing my back against the wall, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would explode. They whispered. He called her by name, but the way he said it, not like a brother-in-law, not like family. It was the way a man says a woman's name when she belongs to him. I clutched the fabric of my dress to keep from collapsing. I wanted to scream, to run at them, to tear down the lies they had built around me. But I stood frozen, tears flooding my eyes, my throat dry like sand. I crept back upstairs before they could see me. In my room I locked the door, dropped to the floor, and let out the sound I had been holding in a sob so raw it shook my body. I covered my mouth with both hands, praying no one would hear me. My whole world had cracked open, and there was no going back. But the worst came the next morning. At breakfast my mother-in-law's eyes met mine. She smiled knowingly, as if she already knew what I had seen. She placed an extra piece of paratha on my plate and said, "Eat, Beta, you look tired. Don't think too much about small things. That's what she called it. That was the moment I realized she wasn't just a bystander. She wasn't ignorant. She was part of it, helping them, covering their tracks, keeping me blind. I looked at my sister across the table, her eyes refusing to meet mine, her lips curved in a faint, guilty smile. And I looked at my husband, who didn't even flinch, didn't even try to hide his betrayal. It was all right there in front of me. My life, my love, my family crumbling like ashes. And I sat there, silent, chewing that paratha with tears burning in my throat, promising myself one thing. This silence won't last forever. Because in that moment I understood my mother-in-law wasn't protecting me. She was protecting them. And one day soon I would make her regret it. The morning after I saw the truth, my heart felt like it had been ripped apart. I wanted to scream, to confront them both, to tear the roof off the house and expose everything. But I didn't. I sat in silence, and in that silence I began to notice something I hadn't fully seen before, my mother-in-law's hand in all of it. She had always been sharp, controlling, but I thought it was just her nature. Now I realized she wasn't just watching, she was orchestrating. One afternoon, as I sat folding laundry, she came into my room. She closed the door softly and sat on the edge of my bed. Her words were dipped in poison, though her tone was calm. "Aisha, men, they have their needs. Sometimes if a wife fails to give enough, he looks elsewhere. Don't take it personally." Her words sliced me open. She wasn't denying it. She wasn't shocked. She was justifying it, blaming me. I looked at her, my mouth trembling, but no sound came out. She placed her hand on mine and whispered, "If you want to save your marriage, you'll learn to ignore certain things. Otherwise, you'll lose everything." That night, her voice echoed in my head. I cried into my pillow until it was soaked, biting down on the fabric to muffle my sobs. She knew, she had known all along. And instead of stopping it, she was helping them, shielding them, twisting the blame onto me. From that day, the gaslighting began. If I questioned my husband, she'd laugh and say I was paranoid. If I avoided my sister, she'd scold me for being jealous. At family gatherings, she'd drop little comments, painting me as unstable, fragile, weak. I remember one evening I stood in the kitchen washing dishes, my hands trembling as I listened to my husband and sister laughing in the living room. My mother-in-law walked in quietly, leaned close to me, and whispered so only I could hear, "If you were more exciting, maybe he wouldn't need someone else." Then she smiled and walked away, leaving me standing there, shattering piece by piece. I started to doubt myself. Was I really not enough? Was I imagining too much? Every time I cried, she would say, "Stop making drama. Men hate drama." Every time I tried to speak, she silenced me. But then one day I found proof. I was cleaning the guest room when I saw it. My sister's scarf stuffed carelessly under the couch cushion. It smelled like her perfume, strong and fresh. My hands shook as I held it, while rising in my throat. My sister hadn't stayed over that night. She had stayed here with him. I pressed the scarf to my chest, my body shaking with rage and grief. It was no longer suspicion, no longer whispers in the dark. It was real, tangible. That night I walked past my mother-in-law's room. Her door was ajar. Inside she was speaking on the phone. Her voice was low, but I heard her say, "Don't worry, I'll keep Aisha busy. She won't find out." My blood ran cold. It wasn't just that she knew. She was actively part of it, helping them betray me. I pressed my hand against the wall to keep from falling. My knees were weak, but my rage was stronger. That was the night something inside me changed. I stopped being the silent, broken wife. I stopped being the weak Bahu who cried into her pillow, because now I had proof, I had clarity. And soon I would have a plan. After that night when I overheard my mother-in-law plotting to keep me blind, something inside me hardened. My tears dried up, and a cold stillness settled over me. I realized crying wasn't going to save me. Begging wouldn't make them stop. If I wanted justice, I would have to carve it with my own hands, so I changed. On the outside, I played the same obedient Ba who they wanted me to be. I cooked, I smiled, I served tea, and I laughed at their shallow jokes. My mother-in-law would look at me with suspicion sometimes, as if she could sense the shift, but she said nothing. She thought she had broken me. She didn't realize she had created my silence, and my silence was my weapon. Inside, I was watching everything. I started to notice patterns. When my husband left, when my sister came over, how my mother-in-law always distracted me at the exact time they slipped away. Every detail burned into my memory. I began collecting proof. Small things at first, a lipstick stain on his shirt collar, a receipt for a hotel room hidden in his wallet, my sister's earring tucked between the couch cushions. I photographed them all on my phone, my hands shaking but steady enough to capture the evidence. Each piece was a nail in the coffin they were building for themselves. At night, when they thought I was asleep, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, imagining the day I would reveal everything. The rage kept me alive, but so did the planning. Revenge became my oxygen. One evening, my sister came over wearing a necklace I had never seen before. My husband's credit card bill had shown a jewelry store purchase just days before. I smiled sweetly and complimented her. "It suits you." She blushed, her eyes flickering toward my husband. My mother-in-law smirked, sipping her tea. I wanted to throw the cup across the room, to burn that smirk off her face. Instead, I bit my tongue until it bled. The hardest part was pretending I didn't know, pretending I was weak, pretending their betrayal hadn't already buried me alive. But I knew my time would come. My mother-in-law grew bolder, too. She began dropping sharper remarks. "A good wife keeps her husband happy, Aisha. Men stray when wives fail." She thought she was breaking me with those words, but each insult was fuel. Every poison she dripped into my ears only sharpened the fire inside me. I started setting small traps, asking casual questions, pretending to be naive. "Where were you last night? I couldn't reach you." Watching my husband stammer, asking my sister why she didn't answer her phone, then watching her glance nervously at my mother-in-law. They thought I was suspicious but not dangerous. That was my greatest strength, because they had no idea I was collecting the pieces of their lies one by one like shattered glass. And soon I would cut them with it. Every night I whispered to myself in the mirror, "Patience, Aisha, patience," and patience became my sword. They thought I was blind, they thought I was broken, but I was watching, waiting, and when the right moment came, they would never see me coming. The day of my revenge arrived quietly, disguised as an ordinary family gathering. It was my husband's birthday. My mother-in-law had insisted on hosting it in our home, inviting uncles, aunts, cousins, anyone who mattered in the family circle. She loved these occasions, where she could parade herself as the matriarch and paint me as the obedient, grateful wife. I dressed carefully that morning, not in sorrowful colors as she preferred, but in a deep red sari, the kind of red that burns and demands to be noticed. I stood before the mirror and whispered, "This ends today." My hands trembled, not from fear, but from the anticipation of release. The house filled quickly with laughter, clinking glasses, the smell of biryani and sweets. I moved through the crowd with a practiced smile, serving plates, pouring drinks, nodding politely. But beneath that mask my heart thundered. In my bag, hidden between folded napkins, were the photographs, the receipts, the earring, the screenshots of messages I had quietly forwarded to my own email. My arsenal of truth. When the cake was brought out, everyone gathered around my husband. My sister was there, dressed a little too beautifully for just family. She laughed too loudly at his jokes. My mother-in-law's eyes sparkled with secret satisfaction. Watching them stand together, the man I married, the sister I trusted, and the woman who was supposed to be my elder, my guide, it felt like a knife twisting in my chest. But I didn't cry, not this time. When the candles were lit, I cleared my throat. My voice was steady, but the room fell silent. "Before we cut the cake, I have something to say." My husband frowned, my sister shifted nervously. My mother-in-law's smirk froze just slightly. I reached into my bag and pulled out the first photo, the lipstick stain on his shirt collar. I held it up, gasps rippled through the room, then the receipt, the jewelry bill, the earring, each item like a dagger thrown onto the table. Finally, the screenshots of their messages glowing on the TV screen as I mirrored my phone. "Happy birthday, darling. Last night was perfect. Sent from my sister." The silence shattered into chaos. My husband's face drained of color. My sister's hands shook. My mother-in-law tried to speak, but her words tangled in her throat. "These are lies. Lies," she screamed, but the evidence was undeniable. The relatives stared, disgust written across their faces. I looked directly at my mother-in-law. "You taught me silence. You thought it was weakness, but silence only sharpened my strength. You wanted to see me broken instead. You will see me walk away, while you drown in the mess you created. Gasps, murmurs. My husband reached out, stammering my name, but I stepped back. Don't touch me. The venom in my voice silenced him instantly. Tears welled in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. This wasn't a moment of weakness. This was justice. I turned to my relatives. They betrayed me, but not just me. Our family, our trust, our values. Let this night be remembered for the truth finally coming out. And then I walked away. Out of the living room, past the stunned faces, past the cake that sat untouched. My heels clicked against the floor like war drums, every step echoing the freedom I was reclaiming. Behind me, voices exploded accusations, sobbing, shouting. But I didn't look back, because the war I had been fighting in silence was finally over. And in that moment, I realized breaking them wasn't my victory. My victory was walking away whole. The night of my husband's birthday was the storm. But what came after was the wreckage. When I left the house that evening, I didn't just walk out of a home. I walked out of the prison they had built for me. For years my mother-in-law had tightened her grip around my throat. My husband had betrayed me with the one person who shared my blood, and my sister, she had stolen more than a man. She had stolen my trust, my dignity. But that night, with the whole family watching, I returned everything they had given me. Shame, lies, betrayal, wrapped in truth so sharp it cut them to pieces. I stayed at a friend's house for a few days, far away from the chaos, but the phone calls wouldn't stop. My husband begging, my mother-in-law screaming, my sister crying. They wanted to explain, to twist my pain into something smaller, something forgivable. But I had nothing left for them. Instead, I filed for divorce. I walked into that courtroom months later wearing a calm smile. My lawyer presented every piece of evidence I had gathered. The judge didn't even flinch. He granted me freedom. My husband's face was pale, my mother-in-law's fury boiling as she realized she had no control left, and my sister, she couldn't even look me in the eye. The papers were signed. Their empire of lies crumbled in silence. But that wasn't the final blow. The final blow was watching them turn on each other. My husband blaming my sister for tempting him, my sister accusing my mother-in-law of orchestrating everything, and my mother-in-law screaming at them both for being careless enough to get caught. They tore each other apart like wolves fighting over scraps. I didn't have to lift another finger. I rebuilt my life slowly, piece by piece, a small apartment that was mine alone, work that gave me purpose. Nights of peace where I could sleep without fear of what secret was hiding in the next room. For the first time in years, silence was not my enemy. Silence was freedom. Sometimes I would pass by people who knew my family. They'd whisper what had become of them. My husband spiraling into debt, my sister abandoned by him once his pride couldn't handle her nagging, my mother-in-law sick and bitter, sitting in an empty house that once echoed with control and cruelty, and me, I was still standing, stronger than ever. The final blow wasn't exposing them. The final blow wasn't the divorce papers. The final blow was surviving them, living well when they thought I would never rise again, smiling when they prayed I would stay broken, breathing freely when they had tried to suffocate me with their lies. One night I lit a single candle in my apartment and sat by the window. The city lights shimmered, cars moved like rivers of fire, and for the first time in so long I felt whole. I whispered into the quiet air, "You thought you destroyed me, but you only destroyed yourselves." And I blew out the candle. This was my truth, the betrayal, the silence, and the strength I found when I finally chose myself. Not every scar is visible, but every scar carries a story. And sometimes, telling that story is the sweetest form of justice. Pause, let the silence sit for 2-3 seconds if this story touched you, if you felt the pain, the anger, or the strength. I invite you to stay with me, because here we don't just tell stories, we uncover uncover the hidden truths families try to bury. Subscribe to this channel, share your thoughts in the comments, and join me for the next story, because sometimes survival itself is the most powerful revenge.